Nick from Patchwerks here, and today I'm actually in my studio instead of the studio in Patchwerks because I want to show off the new product by Squarp called the Hapax. I specifically wanted to take y'all here because the Hapax is the piece that ties all my gear together. I've been sort of on that quest to find what the perfect sequencer is. I've tried things like the Octatrack, which I have here, the Deluge. I've tried, using Ableton, all that, but I realized I really love a grid-based hardware sequencer. And I thought that that's just what I was getting with the Hapax. But more than that, I realized with all the I/O, it ties all my gear together. I love using hardware synthesizers with keyboards. I love to use modular, which takes in CV, and I have some MIDI converters that go from MIDI to CV, and it just does all that amazingly. So I really wanted just to show you sort of an overview of it. I'm still pretty new to it, but it's really awesome. I just really want to go over like some of the cool things like instrument definitions, sort of how we generate patterns and can really just get things going really quickly. So I'm gonna be showing you that very shortly. I have the Hapax booted up in a completely fresh project. I just wanted to walk y'all through kind of the process of getting things going. With things like the Octatrack, usually I would have a template project which would have all my MIDI and such pre-configured, but I wanted to show you how easy it is to start with a fresh project. First thing I want to do though is actually just get everything in scale. So with the Hapax, we actually have 2 projects that can run at the same time, which is really cool. So you kind of seamlessly transition from one song to another. But right now, if I hold down project A and turn this encoder, the way that this encoder system works is going to be kind of like the Electron devices where we have an 8-quadrant system and they map to your encoders. So P scale, we'll set that on, and color, we'll change that to minor. So we have a Dorian scale, which is cool because then, this is our isometric keyboard and it's going to make sure that everything's in scale. So that's the next thing I want to talk about are different modes. The Hapax has 16 different tracks that you can sequence on, the 16th being a transposition track to allow for sort of, song movements and keeping everything in key. That's very cool. So you have effectively 15 that can be routed to MIDI devices, CV devices. And out of those, you have 4 different modes. Live, which is this keyboard mode. Step, which is our grid mode. Pattern, which shows each of these tracks have 8 patterns that we could change between, and automation, where we could draw automation. First, on track 1, what I want to do is introduce my modular drums. And so I'll show you my instrument definitions or how I'm using this. If I go to hold down second, which is our shift button, hit first, it says instrument definition there, click to choose. I click this encoder here, and you can see my list of my instrument definitions. And I made these are super easy to make. They're just text files that go into your SD card in the back. And I have my mod drums right there. So click that, I load it. And now you can see that my step sequencer now over here changes to show, these don't necessarily, you could change what these labels are, but it says kick, snare, hi-hat, etc. And when I go over to live now, I actually have this beautiful view here. It's going to my modular, so I'm not using velocity, but what's cool is that this is, and I'm only really using 4 of them for this example, but I have my kick, snare, hi-hat, and this is the fracture. And if this was MIDI, these would be my velocity. So I could have really low velocity there, high velocity there. Again, I'm running to the mutant brain and just ignoring velocity. But I think that, and over here you can see what these notes are mapping to. So this mod drum is actually going through the mutant brain using MIDI, so I have to have my MIDI messages set very specifically. And that's why I like the instrument definitions. I don't have to remember that C5 is my kick. I just made the instrument definition, put it on here, loaded it up, great. And so now we can either just play it in live or use our step sequencer, which is like that grid-based thing that we were talking about, where this is going to be my kick row, snare, and then hi-hat and fracture. Let me get the BPM up a little bit. 136, and this is just super duper easy. So we're looking at 1 bar right here. We'll put our kicks down on 4, and then our hi-hats on the ups and snare. And so that's just, again, really easy to program a beat, really easy to do things like mute different parts of your drum track. And then, you know, if I like this pattern, but I would just want a new pattern without that kick, I could go over to pattern. And so that's on this first spot here, copy it, paste it over here, and then go back to step mode and just delete my kicks. So now when I go over here, hit play, we get it without the kick, bring the kick back in. Super duper easy. One other quick thing I want to show too is how easy it is to, right now we're just looking at one bar. So we go back to step mode and we see our one bar right here. But if I want to make it a 4-bar loop, and so I could add some variation, again, super simple. I hold down second and hit right here, and that doubles the length and copies everything over. So now we have 2 bars, 4 bars, and we hit left and right to go between those bars. So let's just, on that last part, let's sort of add some variance there, and let's just, I don't know, move the snare there so we can see it play. So that's pretty cool, right? Easy, easy, easy to start programming things really, really fast. And again, that's why I like grid-based controllers, and especially for drums, and especially with my modular. Like, I did love the Metron by WMD because it had a very similar layout, but I wanted something that wasn't taking up rack space, and that's ultimately what started this quest. So that is just the drum part. One other thing that's pretty cool that I'll show here, because we'll just focus on the sort of control voltage stuff right now, is that our automation, and this is, I think, actually incredible. With our automation, we can automate control voltage going out. And so here in the back, I have a couple of plugs that are kind of going to my modular system. And what's cool is that I can just, you know, if I want to change the decay time on my hi-hat, it's super duper easy. So over here, I went to automation, and you have to add your source. So there we go. You go and pick CV out and CV out 1. So now out of CV out 1, this is our 0 point. This means 0 volts. It goes to +5, -5. I'm going to take that channel and run it into my hats are coming out of my Platts hats, and the morph is going to be the length of the hi-hat. So let's do a new pattern just so we could hear more of that hi-hat. So go back over to our step. You know, again, pretty easy to program. I love how easy it is to program. So here's our pattern. Cool. And now we could go back to our automation, CV1 out, and now I can just sort of draw my automation. And right now we have interpolation on. I'm gonna just turn interpolation off so you could see that when it's high, that's gonna give me a long note, and it's really easy. That's so cool, right? And yeah, I just think that's incredible because when I perform live, I like to do some of that stuff by hand, and we can actually, in this definition, this is sort of an advanced thing, but if we go to assign, I actually have these knobs sort of controlling those CV outputs, so I don't have to reach over to my rack to actually do things in my modular, and it will record over here. But again, drawing automation is just super duper sweet. I used non-interpolated patterns because I wanted certain steps to be really sharp, but I could turn interpolation on, and it's really easy to then just like, you know, now you see it's like a gradual curve. Again, super easy, super sweet, and yeah, so love being able to draw automation, and especially with the rack stuff. But let's say we want to add a bass. So I have a lot of synthesizers around me, and the cool thing is I don't have to actually choose which one. Again, by hooking it all up, it's all routed for me because I put a lot of work in beforehand, used my instrument definitions. So let's do an acid bass line. I have a hydronium here, so second, and hit second, instrument definition, click to choose, and we go to hydronium. So now it's in my scale mode, and now we could show the isomorphic keyboard here. I love how colorful the keyboard is too. Right now we start at C5, but we can lower it to C4. So it's really easy to jump through. Kind of like to start, that's too low. And so I could either program it in, record it like that. So and then go over to step mode, and you can now see the notes there, and it's really easy to edit. Like if I wanted to change the length of this note, I just go to my encoder and change the length by turning this one. If I want this one to be more accented, I can turn up the velocity. I have cool things like micro timing, so it's easy for me to move the notes to and fro, and chance. So if I want this note to not hit all the time, easy. If I want to change the note, I can turn this knob there. So editing is a snap, and again, like it's even cool if I wanted to make all these. So what I'm going to do, I want to show you another cool thing that I've learned on this thing, but I'm going to start a new pattern there. So that one had that pattern saved. New step, go down to C4, put down a bunch of these notes. Now, if I want to change a parameter on all of those, I could just hold the grid like that, and I can then change the chance. So now let's say I have all those selected, change chance 50%. So it changed the probability of all these. So again, I think editing on this thing is super duper rad. And we have the ability, again, if I wanted to make this, 4 bars, and then on that last one, go up to, let's see, that's going to be a G. So super duper easy. And then we could zoom in and out of our patterns by hitting plus and minus here. The representation of each of these will kind of be distorted because there's multiple notes there, but at least we can see the full sequencer when we do things like that. And then, again, something that we have our acid bass line, so now let's add, a polysynth. Second, third, track 3, and we'll use the trigon. And I think I have some kind of patch, like horns kind of program. And check this out. This is really, really cool. When we look at this up here and I press notes, it'll tell me what chord I'm playing. So it's really, really nice because, when we start playing, you either have a music theory background and know all those things, or you start learning and then you're like, oh, I realize I actually like my C minor chord, or, C minor 7, stuff like that. It'll actually show you those things and sort of help you out. There's also actually a chord mode too, where if I hold down live and turn this knob here, we actually get chords. So, which is kind of nice. This is going to sound weird because we have our acid bassline sound with some pretty rich sounding chords, but let's just see what's going on there. One other thing that's really cool is that when I recorded the first time, it just recorded onto the bar, but we could actually have it dynamically extend out. So second record, if we go over to looper and we turn it auto length, now when I record, it's gonna automatically extend. So let's try this. All right, so. So again, cool, we got that pattern. One thing that you noticed is that I didn't play in that first bar. I got nervous. We all get nervous sometimes, but we could fix this, right? So we go into our editor here, into step, and I could go over to this bar, and here's our start point. We could set that as the start. So if I hold down left and then 1, now we just truncate it. It'll start there, and you can see that visual representation there. So. Cool, that's awesome. Super duper easy, right? And we're jamming, we have everything synchronized. This is my main source. I do actually also have my clock running over to, these are clock outputs into my modular for other timed things. So I have like a maestro, I have other timed modulations. So again, this is my centerpiece. One last thing I kind of want to go again, automation with MIDI stuff, super cool. We did it with CV, but with MIDI, again, with our instrument definitions, when I click here, you can see that we actually have our standard CCs. And so these standard CCs, if we knew them, MIDI implementation, we can say what's going on. If I reached over to my trigon, turned a knob, it would record it. But in instrument definitions, I went ahead and looked at the MIDI implementation and started adding these as definitions. So filter freak. So now when I click on this, boop, like that, now this drawing is going to be that that filter cutoff. And so let's do something, let's zoom out. So we actually have the full picture there. And with our automation, we can just draw it in. So interpolation's on, so we could do that thing where I was talking about before, where we start low, kind of peak high, medium. Let's just see what that sounds like. Again, I like things where I could kind of just start drawing, jamming, and then I see what comes out of it. So this might be really crazy because maybe I just completely turned the cutoff all the way down. We could fix it up, but it's pretty non-destructive. Yeah, that doesn't sound too bad, right? And again, the automation's right there and it's easy to edit. We interpolated it, but we can still zoom in and we can do edits. Like maybe we want this one to be pretty muted, then boom, jump way up and then back down. So cool. That is so awesome. And again, we have all of our patterns. We really weren't doing too much in constructing this as a song mode, and I haven't really breached the song mode. There's a lot of things I didn't breach, like effects, which allows us to do more randomization, utility, and rhythms. We have a second project that can be running at a different tempo. We could do snapshots, so we could save things while we're working. You know, this is, I can't really express how excited I am about this sort of thing because it is just so easy. I haven't had a dedicated sequencer and I was sort of reticent to make the plunge, but now that I have it, I can't see myself going back. And I just think it's incredible. So you can now find the Hapax at Patchwerks. We are now fulfilling orders. Again, very excited to have shown you all the cool things this thing could have done. And like always, happy patching.